In this new lecture, we are going to discuss some important types of graphs and charts. Uh, for you, I think you should know two aspects of these. One is the why and where we use the chart, and second, how do we make them in Excel. So we start with the first one, pie chart. Pie chart is mostly used to show the proportions or shares of different entities in the whole. For example, if we are talking about the provinces of Pakistan, so what is the total share of GDP of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in the total in Pakistan? Similarly, what is the total proportion of Punjab in the GDP of Pakistan? So we use pie chart to show such information. Making pie chart is one of the easiest among all the graphs and charts. And one important thing before starting any type of chart is that any data that we have in the first column will be considered as part of the x-axis. So if we are making a chart in Excel, the x-axis is the horizontal line or the bottom line of the chart, and vertical axis is called the y-axis. So I repeat, first column of the data is always considered as x-axis. You should remember this point, and this is really important. This is x-axis, and second column of the data is considered as y-axis. Also, if there are more than two columns, let's say we have 4 columns, the first column will be considered as x-axis and all other columns will be considered as y-axis. Y-axis are the values which are actually plotted on the graph. And one second important thing that you should remember about all graphs is that if the first column is not text, I repeat, if first column is not text, then it is considered as value and it will go into the making of the graphs. It will not be considered as labels. If first column is not text, it will go into graph values. So that creates a problem. For example, if we have years in the first column, 2001, 2, 3, 4, these are values, it is not text. So these will be added to the graph value. So if we want to plot GDP of Pakistan over 5 years, GDP and years both will constitute the chart. If we haven't told explicitly that years are the labels, they are not part of the chart. So in that case, if this is the case, if first column is not text, you cannot make a chart directly. Rather, we shall make the chart in 2 steps. So in such case, we shall make the chart in two steps. And the first step would be to select just the values which you want to put on the chart, and do not select the first column. Select the values and do not select the first column. And we shall add the first column in the second step. Step 2, select first column in second step. I shall show how we can do that and what do I mean by that. So let's start with some data and have practice on these points which we just discussed. I'm starting with some blank values. So I'm starting with the GDP of Pakistani provinces. GDP of Pakistan provinces. So we have KPK, we have Sindh, then we have Punjab, and let's add one more. And we have Balochistan. And assume that let me add the column titles, provinces, and this is GDP. So assume that we have the GDP in percentages. I'm not sure exact percentage of, but I'm just guessing. So let's say that the GDP share of KPK in Pakistan GDP is, let's say, 20% or 15%. Let's make it 20%. Okay. Seen, I would think that it is 35%. And let's make Punjab as 45%. So the remaining should be it's already 100. Okay, so let's reduce some of these. Let's make it 15, and let's make it 30. So now they sum up to 90, and let's assign 10% to Balochistan. Okay, now just I said that the first column will always be considered as x-axis, so these provinces will go to the x-axis. It will be shown here horizontally, and the values, the GDP values, will go to the y-axis, so they will be shown vertically. What I'm doing is to select all this data Okay, and since the first column has text, I'm not worried about uh, the making of the graph. If there were values, numeric values, then the steps that I discussed, we will go for those steps. But since the first column uh, is text, so I'm not worried at all. So I'm selecting all this data in one go. I go to the insert menu and I go to the charts tab, and then I select pie chart. And in the pie chart, I have several options. So I go for this 2D pie. Okay. Now, for each of these uh, provinces, we have a separate color which shows, um, which identifies the color on the pie. We can further modify this graph in a way that we can add a title to it. So here right now it is GDP, but you can modify it. So if I want to add some additional text to it, so instead of GDP, I can modify it to GDP of Pakistani provinces. So I double click on that, and uh, I can add text to it. And if this title is not given, for example, if the chart is like this and you are not able to modify it, but still it is possible to add different information to this specific chart. So if I click on the chart like this, it opens up two new menus at the top. So if I click outside, you would see that those two menus disappear. But if I click on it, one menu with the name of chart design and second menu with the name of format will appear. So in the chart design menu, I can go to quick layouts, that is the second item in the menu, and I can quickly see what elements can I add to this chart. For example, if I go with the first one, it gives me the percentages or the values of each specific category, and it also gives me the chart title. So you see the small it gives me the chart title and it gives me the percentages. Similarly, if I like to have some additional text with it, for example, if I want to show the legends or the labels on the right, not on the bottom of the chart, so I can go for this layout. Yet I can go for some other variations. So it is up to you and up to the requirements of the chart, but you can, the point is that you can select layout for your chart from the design chart design menu, and you can go to the quick chart layouts. So I would go with this one because it mentions the percentages for quick readability, and it also mentions the categories colors, which makes it easy for quick readability. And similarly, I can modify the chart title here. So pie chart, remember where we use pie chart. We use pie chart for showing proportions and for showing percentage shares of different entities in the data set. So we shall continue with the charts topics, but at this time I would like that you make a pie chart and play around with the options of layouts, and if there is anything you can then ask me. Thank you. So let us discuss the construction of column charts. How do we make them and where do we use them? So column charts are vertical objects that are used for comparing data across entities. In this data set, let's say we want to compare the GDP of a country in 4 different years. So you want to see how the GDP has fluctuated over the years. The same data can be represented on a line chart, but we can do the same using column charts. The problem that we discussed earlier, that if we have numeric values in the first column, then we will not make the graph in one go, rather we shall make it in 2 steps. So what happens if we make this graph in one go? Let me select all these values, and then let's go to the insert menu and select columns. Now if you look at this graph, this is not what we had expected. Years and GDP are all plotted in the values section. We wanted years to show on the x-axis, but they are not shown on the x-axis. So automatic labels of 1, 2, 3 are assigned, and years are shown on the values. So we have 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004. The blue color is for years and red color is for GDP. So this happens when you have numeric values and you insert the graph directly. So I'm deleting this graph, and now just like we discussed in the start of the lecture, that we shall make the chart in 2 steps. Step number 1, select the values and do not select the first column. I would modify the text, select the values in the second column, and do not select the first column. So I'm selecting the second column, and now I go to insert, click on graph. Okay, so our basic graph is ready, but we don't see years that should be shown on the x-axis. So in the second step, we'll modify this graph, right click inside the graph, and you should see an option, select data. So that option is here. In this dialog box, we see that there are 2 menus. On the right menu, we have horizontal category or axis labels. On the left menu, we have legend entries, a series. So the series is GDP, and the horizontal values are 1 to 3, which are assigned by Excel itself. Instead of 1 to 3, we want to show 2001, 2002, and 2003. So I'm going to click edit, and then I select these and click OK. Now you will see a problem. The problem is I selected years and it has added years to the first column, which is not correct. So instead of selecting, let me clear the previous selection. Instead of selecting the column title, I will select just the labels. Okay, and now I can come back and see that we have all the graph in the desired format. So the first one is 2001, and we can see that the GDP has gradually increased. There was a setback in 2003. It didn't increase as expected, but gradually it has increased over the period of time. So the vertical structures, when we represent data with the help of these vertical structures, we call it column chart. So let me repeat this process quickly. How did we do that? We selected the second column. Why not we selected the first column? Because it contains numeric values. So we selected the first column, and then we go to insert, select our desired chart type, then right click, select data, and edit the axis labels. Select only the values from the axis label, and OK. And now you can do the regular stuff. For example, you can change this specific title, you can add values here, you can add labels here. So let's go to the chart design and quick layouts, and we shall select a layout that has all the three available titles. So this is the chart title, which we can change by double clicking it. This is the axis title. You can again change it. So on the y-axis we show GDP, and on the x-axis we show years. And you can also change the title of the chart. Okay, we can also make another graph, very similar one, but the name is a bit different. So let's copy this data down and paste it here. I'm repeating the same process, but this time I'm going for bar chart. Bar chart are vertical structures. So instead of showing it, horizontal structure. Instead of showing the data vertically, we can show the data horizontally. So let's go to insert and go to bar chart. So this will become a bar chart. And the same thing, right click. Let me drag a bit it down so that it does mix with the previous graph. Right click and select data. The same thing, instead of 1 2 3 we will assign our own labels, and we have now a bar chart. So the difference between bar and column, bars are they are horizontal, and columns are vertical structures. So it is up to you how you want to represent the data. We have other examples which I shall cover in the next one, and then we shall come back. Now let's go quickly into two other types of the column charts. Assume that we have one additional country in the data set. Previously we had just one country, that was Pakistan. Now let's add another country, that is Bangladesh. So we can again go with the same principle. If we have numeric data in the first column, we shall leave it out. We select the other two columns, go to insert, then go to columns and select the columns. Chart from there, and this is what we call clustered. So in the clustered column charts, we have the we have multiple categories represented by a different color, and if you see, for the same year we have now two countries. So over here, let's quickly change the axis labels like we did previously. Select this, select these, and click OK. So for the same year we have now two categories which we can compare with one another. So obviously in this case Pakistan GDP is higher than Bangladesh in the first year. Same is the case in the rest of the years. This is the example of clustered columns. Clustered columns, we represent different entities with a different bar, with a different column, and having a different color. And there is another type which is a bit different, which we call stacked. In the case of stacked, we use just one column but represent each category with a different color within the same column. So let's create this one. Select the first the second and third column, leaving out the years. We go to column, and from here we go into more. This is our stacked. Okay, now you see the difference between stacked and clustered. In clustered, we represent each country with a different column. Each column has a different color. But in the case of stacked, we use a single column but represent each country with a different color within that column. And the size of the area represents the values of each country. So if you can see, the blue area is greater than the red area, and the blue area represents Pakistan. So select data, and then we change the labels so the years are correctly represented on the graph, and that's it. And again, these labels, these legends were automatically added by the graph. So these are two more categories of the column chart. One final category that is not available readily in the insert graph area, but we can add that using the data analysis tools. This is histogram. Histogram shows the distribution of the data. In other words, it shows how a specific value or range of values are repeated in the data set. So it plots values against its frequencies. Histogram. So I'm generating a fact data set for the purpose of histogram, and we shall see how the data is distributed. So I'm creating some random numbers equal to RAND, right? Okay, and I'm repeating these values, let's say up to 1000 values. So up to 1000, and now I'm converting these values to these formulas to values. So we have now fact data which we can now show on histogram. To create a histogram, we go to the data menu, and in the last tab we should see analysis tools. Right now I cannot see this, so I have to install it. So I go to file, options, and add-ins, and we should have analysis tool pack. This is our analysis tool pack. Click on go. Analysis tool pack should be checked. You should not just select it, you should check it. The check mark should be there. Okay, and now data analysis is available in the data menu under the analyze tab. I click on this, and now we can see we have a histogram here. Okay, in the input range I'll select all these values, control shift down, so we have selected this whole range. Bin range is how you want to classify the values into different ranges. For example, from 0 to 0.1, from 0.1 to let's say 0.2, and so on and so forth. I'm leaving it empty so that Excel picks the bin range automatically. I won't change anything here, and it will send the result to a new worksheet ply, and I also need a chart output. If you don't click it, it will not create the histogram, so you have to click the chart output. Now click OK, and we have a histogram here. So how this histogram is read, it says that values 0.0003 up to 0.006 have this much frequency. Means it occurred how many times? This specific value occurred, I think, 4 or 5 times. 0.06 and so on, it occurred around how many times? It is 30 times in the data set. So this is how histogram is made. To make a histogram, you don't have to create the fake data. You will have your own actual data, but to make a histogram, first of all you have to activate the data analysis tool pack from the options and add-ins. Once it is there, then you click on the histogram, and you have to activate the chart option, and it will create the histogram for you. So I think you should have some time for practice, and if you have any question, please let me know. Thank you.